What does it truly mean to be well? In the world that moves fast, where overstimulation, chronic stress, and endless demands pull us away from ourselves, healing is often reduced to a simple quick fix. But Dr. Adolf Brown sees this differently. Adolf is not only a highly skilled and deeply experienced healer, but also someone I trust wholeheartedly. He has been my go-to person for energy healing whenever I'm in Bali, and his work has always been profoundly impactful for me. With over 20 years of experience, he brings together Eastern, Western, and shamanic traditions, working with applied kinesiology, craniosacral therapy, functional medicine, and energy healing to help the body restore its natural balance. His approach is not just about treating symptoms, it's about reconnecting with the body's innate ability to heal itself. I have had the privilege of studying craniosacral therapy and other energy healing modalities with Adolf, and every experience working with him has been both effortless and deeply transformative. His ability to tune into the body's energy with precision makes healing feel like a natural return, almost as if the body is simply remembering its own flow and balance. In this episode, we explore why so many of us feel unwell, physically, emotionally, and energetically. How modern cities like Hong Kong, London, Dubai drains our vitality. The forgotten bioelectric nature of the body and why we have lost touch with it. What it really takes to restore wellness, not as a quick fix, but as a way of being. This conversation is an invitation to pause, reflect, and step into a more refined understanding of what it means to be well. Let's begin. Hi, Adolf. Welcome to your Soul's Therapist podcast. It's been a while since I was hoping to host you as a guest, and thank you so much for your time and coming here today.
It's a pleasure.
How are you today?
I'm doing really well. I had a good day of work, seeing patients, and I'm kind of riding a little high because my son's been taking piano lessons, and yesterday he composed a song on the piano, or a piece of music, and I was so blown away by that. You know, he's 16 years old. I didn't compose my first song till I was 40. So that was a really cool experience.
Nice. Creative being. I am seeing you are in your healing studio in Bali Ubud, that place where sometimes I'm coming to see you and to get some healing. And for everyone who is listening, I did a few trainings with Adolf, and regularly when I'm coming to Bali, this is my person to go to get my energy healing from. And Adolf, you have so much experience and you're so good at what you're doing. And without any hesitation, I can totally recommend anyone to work with you either remotely. We do some cool healing work even during COVID times on Zoom, and in person. I totally can just recommend working with you, and I really appreciate your work so much. Tell us a little bit about your journey in healing arts and all this huge amount of expertises you have and what you've today believe about healing.
Well, I guess it started with a fascination for understanding and perceiving energy. I found out that through various readings like Carlos Castaneda that an energetic world exists out there, and I became fascinated by that and started trying to learn about that, and that led me into the healing arts, studying Reiki, studying polarity therapy, studying acupuncture, and then massage and working with crystals and I just began trying to work with and understand the energetic body. And that eventually led into chiropractic college, and which is another, at least the way I understand it, another form of energetic medicine. And then eventually I learned about craniosacral therapy and applied kinesiology, and that's sort of where I ended up. Most of my practice now is doing applied kinesiology and craniosacral therapy.
Yeah. And I had my recent first kinesiology session with you, which wasn't not even planned. And I complained about my allergy, and we discovered that I just don't have enough acid in my stomach to digest food, and that's maybe the reason of some inflammation in my body and allergic reaction as a result of suppressed immune system. That was so cool. It was just so cool to to find that out. You did it in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a very efficient diagnostic system. And I see that pattern a lot, and it might be worth talking about it because it's such an important pattern and is often overlooked by many other healthcare professionals, medical doctors, naturopaths, acupuncturists, and a lot of structural body workers miss it. And it's such a foundational piece because if the stomach doesn't produce enough acid, there's incomplete digestion. And when there's incomplete digestion, the partially digested food, when it gets to the small intestine, creates an immune response in the small intestine because the lymphatic system is trying to break down the partially digested food. So every time you eat, you get an inflammatory reaction. And that inflammation then can be the source of just about every symptom known to man. I mean, I don't think there's one symptom that I can name that couldn't be linked to this cause, and which isn't to say it's the only cause for sure, but it's a very important one. And interestingly enough, I've seen this pattern much more prevalently after COVID. So yeah, it's a big one, and any kind of musculoskeletal pain that's not responsive to musculoskeletal therapies or acupuncture, massage, chiropractic, things like that, then you have to suspect that there's a gut inflammatory origin going on, and this is a very common cause of that.
I'm very grateful that you discovered that, and I just want to report you quickly that I religiously take apple cider vinegar every morning, and as I told you, have like higher inflammation when I'm in Hong Kong, and my inflammation is way less than it used to be. So I don't even drink it every time before meal, but once a day in the morning, I do this first thing in the morning, and I really feel the difference. So this is already very, very helpful, honestly. So thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for those transformational 10 minutes that we didn't even plan. Tell me.
I would say to your listeners, if you have any health problem that you can't seem to sort out or resolve in another way, explore this as an option.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the kinesiology was very interesting, how just by testing my muscles and seeing how my body reacts to this test, instantly you just you gave me the solution in 10 minutes, literally. And I was struggling with this for a couple of years. So definitely healing experience.
I got a big kick out of doing that. I get great satisfaction out of solving these health issues.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more. I know you live in a very beautiful environment. You live in Bali for many years now, and your main job is running healing energy and supporting people on their healing processes. And tell me today what, after all these years of your experience of supporting people healing, what do you believe healing is all about, or what you're coming today at when it comes to healing?
Well, I think to fully answer that question, I need to digress into a little bit of history. And there's something called the yugas, which is a Hindu term or a Vedic term for the ages of mankind. And it's based on something called the progression of the equinox. So the planet circles a central sun that the Vedics call the Brahma, the central consciousness of our life, and it's not a perfect circle; it's elliptical. So as the equinoxes progress, as the planet moves through space, it gets farther or closer to this Brahma consciousness. And we are just coming out of an age or cycle where the Earth was at its farthest point from the central sun of Brahma, or the central consciousness. And this is the point of the lowest evolution of humanity. The farthest humanity will ever be from God realization. And we turned that corner. There's varying opinions about what that actual turning point was, but some say, or at least Yukteswar says, it was around 1500 AD, which is a very interesting time because that is when Columbus discovered the Americas, and that started a cycle of humanity that was quite devastating to the world, where the colonial powers decided that they were going to control the rest of the world, and through the dissemination of diseases, maybe 3/4 of the population of the Americas died through smallpox and other diseases. So it was a massive change in the world. And if you look at the last 500 years, 500 years in the evolution of humanity is nothing, really. It's a drop in the bucket, but we've gone from sailing ships to landing on the moon, and we've gone from sending letters by ship. Benjamin Franklin used to send letters from the Americas to Europe, and the letter would take a month or two to arrive. And then the reply by whoever he sent the letter to would take a month or two to get back. Now all we do is we pick up a phone and we can instantly communicate. So there's an incredible globalization of consciousness occurring. And one of the aspects of this is that in the darkest part of the Kali Yuga, in the farthest point of humanity from its higher level of consciousness, we lost our understanding of the body as being a bioelectric vehicle. We lost our understanding of what Yukteswar calls the electrical nature of our humanness, and this is what fascinated me in the early days of my healing journey. Is what is this energy, and I became fascinated by this. And what's happening globally now, what's happening is that more and more people are waking up to this understanding of their bioelectric nature, of their energetic nature, that we're just not physical beings, that we have a spiritual energy within us that wants and needs to be expressed. And this is the the essence of healing in my mind. That what you were asking, well, what is healing? You know, how do we do this? And it's like it's about waking up to these spiritual gifts and these soul gifts and these bioelectric understandings and perceptions and bringing them forth in life. Just
Okay.
had a patient today who went through a very difficult period where she lost her mother died, and she lost her husband to a marital conflict, and she was devastated in a very dark place, and she couldn't get out of it. And when I did the cranial psychotherapy, I could perceive that she had uh, open chakras in her third eye, in her crown chakra, in the base of her skull. And I said to her, "Do you know you're a channel?" And she didn't know this. She didn't understand it. I mean, she knew she was intuitive and she followed her intuition, but she didn't perceive this gift that she had within herself. And there's a very interesting archetypal image in shamanic literature where shamanic initiates at a certain point in the process have a dream or a vision where they're dismembered by wild animals. They're torn apart by wild animals. And it's, I guess I've never had that experience, but from people I've talked to who have had, it's pretty scary and pretty disturbing. But this concept of dismemberment, in a way, sometimes life gives us these initiations, whether we want them or not, whether we ask for them or not. And I said, you know, this terrible process that you went through, in a sense, was a shamanic initiation. Your old life was dismembered. Your old life was torn apart. So I think the point here is we go through hard times, all of us, and there's a certain part of life that sometimes throws us really hard curves, and we can use that for our own spiritual growth and our own spiritual development by allowing things to emerge in our lives that might not have otherwise come through. And I think one of the big keys is understanding our spiritual gifts and opening to our spiritual gifts and our perception of energy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. But I have two questions. First, how do you think we forgot about it? What made us forget that we are spiritual beings and we are made of energy? And second, how do you see the path towards resurrecting this idea, or not an idea, the reality?
Well, one of my favorite authors is a man named Martin Kretschel, who's a mind shaman. And he has a term for people. He says, we're shimmering amnesiac. And I think part of the reason I went into that whole discussion of the Kali Yuga was because in that darkest place of humanity, that's where we forgot this. And now there is a global reawakening that's occurring. And I think that another aspect is that religion, to a certain extent, Christianity very much suppressed many of these functions, many of these gifts. And there was a very big repression of our psychic abilities through the Christian mentality. For example, I just recently learned that Galileo, who was one of the most foundational astronomers in understanding modern astronomy, was forced to recant his theories by the Christian church because he was faced with being tortured.
Yeah.
So, there was a tremendous repression of this. Um, People were burned at the stake for having intuitive abilities. And it's like a, there was a natural field that was covered by asphalt. And now there's cracks in the asphalt and these little plants are growing out. And eventually nature will restore itself. Plants will return, trees will return. And these intuitive gifts that we all possess will be able to be expressed in society.
So you believe we will start healing the moment we will start actually relating with ourselves as energetic beings rather than
Yeah,
just the mind?
I think that's a very key concept. It's a very key point. And
What
a
would
lot
be the first step towards that? Like where if I'm stuck, and I don't have my experience of being a soul in the body or energy being, I don't have connection to this electricity like you're describing inside of me. Maybe I'm numb or disconnected completely from my spiritual side or from my energy aspect. Where to start?
Well, one of the questions I often ask my patients when they ask me that question is, what did you like to do when you were a kid? Because it's that inner child self that holds the answers to these soul pieces. Our soul is present in the child as it comes into this world. And the role of the adult and the parents and the teachers and the mentors should be to help the child recognize these gifts and bring them forth into the world. But unfortunately, in the last few hundred years, the roles have been to suppress that.
And why do you think so? Why do you think the goal was to suppress our nature of being, our true self, like this energy, soul, spirit, essence, whatever you want to call it?
Well, I think if people are purely identified with the body and power, which is associated with that, it scares people. It's really scary for people to feel these kind of feelings, to have these kind of understanding, because it's not necessarily controllable in rational, linear way.
So what you're saying, the blockage is that we are afraid of our nature. This is interesting. Yeah. It's very interesting that you said that. Like 1 hour before our meeting today, I was doing a session with someone. I was doing a clairvoyant reading. And the question was why I distract myself with social media and TV watching. And I want to be present. I want to be myself. I want to connect. I want to meditate, but I cannot. Like I'm just continuously being distracted. And I took a look at that. And what I saw is that parts of that person that are taking him out of the body, disconnecting him from the present moment, are very scared. If what will happen if he will connect, if he will see, and literally that's what I was seeing and getting, is like they are very scared if this person will come to himself and realize himself. They are terrified of the idea because everything will crumble, They are afraid that everything status quo will crumble, life as it was built will crumble. So I think it's very important that you are addressing this actual real fear, and I'm sure this is also why people do not do healing work, right?
Absolutely, and I think that very true on an individual basis, and I also think it's true on a collective basis. I think our society as a whole is going through this. I think the the control of institutions and the suppression of these gifts from a societal standpoint is crumbling, and therefore there's a collective fear of this as well, and that is then transmitted through these social mediums, and we can easily buy into that. So it takes a lot of discipline, it takes a lot of self-awareness to not get sucked into the narratives, the social narratives that we're being fed by the societies that are trying to control us, and by our programming as a child, and by our sometimes of the sculpture by Michelangelo, which is this big chunk of rock and just one arm rock, and it's like there's somebody stuck inside that rock, and he's trying to push himself out of this hard pacing.
So let's summarize this. Let's just try to put these pieces together. So healing is when we realize ourselves as spiritual, energetic beings. But for many years, this has been prohibited, shamed, shut down, and many people had to disconnect from it. Maybe it was actually even not safe, right? There was this even like hunting of people that have supernatural abilities or that speak from themselves, right? So maybe out of even survival, people had to shut down and tell their children to shut down, right? Like, and it went through generation to generation. Just don't go there, don't feel anything, just, learn something and get a job, be safe. And so we got conditioned, and there is this fear maybe instilled by, our generations, that it's very dangerous if you start being intuitive, or you feel something or see something, or you even start figuring out who you are, right? So, and you're saying this is the biggest blockage to our happiness and wellness.
Yes, and I think the other one that's worth talking about is soul disassociation that occurs through trauma. I think that as a society, and as individuals, a lot of people are very highly traumatized, and one of the responses to trauma is to disassociate from our body, for fragments of our soul to disassociate from our consciousness, and this is a psychological survival thing. One way to look at healing is that these soul pieces need to be reintegrated. They need to be brought back into our wholeness. And so this is another part of the process of healing. It's to recognize where those pieces went and to somehow negotiate a return of those pieces.
I really, really, really agree with you. If there is a big piece of our energy missing or disconnected, it's very difficult for everything to click in a way. And for that current of energy starts running and we feel like ourselves. And so we have these two things. One is our conditioning of being disconnected from our energetic self or spiritual self. And the other thing is repercussions of having traumatic experience and having like a split spirit and the body, or disconnection. So if we start with the first one, you mentioned, remember how you were when you were a child. So it's interesting that you said that we are born with this open, right, experience of being energetic souls.
Yeah, and one of the things that I very strongly believe is the importance of creativity for our spirituality. That creativity and spirituality are super linked, and we're in essence creative beings.
Yeah.
And so part of this healing process is rediscovering that inner creativity and nurturing that creativity and allowing that creativity to emerge.
All right. So what you're saying that in the first case, if we have forgotten due to conditioning and like a societal suppression of our true nature, of our spirituality, the medicine for that, to remember how it feels to be you, like creative soul, the medicine would be to engage in some creative work.
Absolutely. And people often, talk about meditation, and I think there's a lot of confusion about meditation because one image of it is sitting cross-legged in front of a Buddha statue going home, and that is certainly a valid technique of meditation, but meditation is both an adjective and a verb. In other words, it is a process. What are you doing? I'm meditating, but it's also a state. And the goal of the process of meditation is to get into a meditative state. But that process can be anything that we do. It can be going surfing, or it can be painting a picture, or drawing, or writing, or singing, or dancing. I've been learning about the early Islamic mystics and the Sufis, and music and dance was a huge mystical experience for these people.
Okay, so practically, you're a man, and generally speaking, for men, it seems to be there is a little bit more like challenge to feel creative or be creative. Of course, there are some men, painters, writers, musicians, but I feel like women have more freedom to tap into that, like through dancing, for example. Men are not very dancey, usually, beings. What would
My wife would concur with that statement.
What would be your suggestion for men? How can they re-engage with their creative aspect without feeling like they're a girl?
Well, I think the difference, one way to look at it is women have wombs, and that's the ultimate creative organ. They have innately in their DNA, in their physical body, the capacity to create life. That's unbelievable. And men don't have that. So in some ways it's harder for men to tap into that energy. It's not as innate, it's not as easy.
Thank you for saying that, for validating this difficulty, maybe a challenge for men. Yeah.
So how as a man do you do this creativity? And part of it is dealing with the programming of being the provider and the person who has to hold down the job and pay the rent and do these kind of things. And there's a tremendous, to go back to our theme of social conditioning and programming, I think for men, there's a very strong social programming to be the provider. And in that programming, creativity can seem frivolous in a way. I was just going through one of my history sort of archaeology feeds in Facebook, and they discovered this Cro-Magnon settlement, or this Cro-Magnon dwelling that was made with mammoth bone. So these massive bones, and they used them then to make a dwelling out of. They used it for the structure of the dwelling. So these primitive humans, they were going out and they were killing mammoths. I mean, a mammoth is a big animal. It takes a lot of macho courage to go out and kill mammoths. But I think that genetic programming is still in the masculine nature. It's like, okay, I got to go out and kill a mammoth, whatever that means. If that means landing the deal or whatever. So in that sense, creativity can seem frivolous and non-productive, and where we're going against that programming of having to be the provider and having to work.
But what if we don't? What if we don't go against this? But what if we help to integrate into their life the creative aspect of it? For example, there are men that are taking care of the family, and this is the setting, and this is it. How can they, regardless of the fact that they are providers, tap into their soul?
Well, I think it comes back to finding what the soul piece is that gives us that excitement, that electrical energy, that sense of happiness and joy and childlike excitement.
Yeah.
It can be simple things like when I get up in the morning and I write my to-do list and I color it in. I have a bunch of pens and I make boxes and I color in various things. And to me, it creates that balance somehow of okay, well, I got to get stuff done in the day. There's my to-do list. But by putting in the creative aspect, it keeps that balance alive. And one of the things that I'm working for in my own life is to become a musician. So, this is definitely not a career path that most people can survive on. Especially now with things like Spotify, it's very challenging to make money as a musician. And so, in that sense, okay, it's a diversion, or it's a non-productive thing, but I still take a music lesson every week, and I still work on this, musical aspect of myself, even though I can't at this point put 100% of my energy into that. I put as much energy as I can each day, even if it's when I walk from yoga barn to my car, I'm singing, or when I walk from my house to my car, I'm singing, or sometimes driving in my car, I'm singing. So we have to eke out these moments and feed this creative fire. You could think about it as a little fire, and we're putting sticks on that fire and to keep it alive.
Yeah, thank you for saying this. And I think it's a major question and major challenge for modern people, even women today, especially. Like, I'm in Hong Kong, and there is a challenge for women to be in their feminine, in this even being connected to their creativity, and also the energy aspect of it, and also the spiritual aspect of it. It's interesting that today you mentioned the womb for women, but not many women are in the womb, or connected to this powerhouse inside their body also. So that becomes, in a way, like the disconnection from the spirit, from the energy, from creativity takes over, I would say, both genders, especially in big cities. And thank you for this very important reminder about those small things, just singing and using colors and finding ways and just not forgetting about that. And I do really believe you're absolutely right that reconnecting with our spiritual self is remembering how we were when we were kids. And I just really cannot stop myself from asking you, how did you remember yourself? In which point of your life you were like, you just touched upon that pure spiritual side of yourself and connected to your energy? And I guess that took you to becoming a healer. But how did it happen to you?
Well, I was very lucky in my upbringing. I was born in the U.S. and raised in a very rural part of the South in Tennessee. And so I had access to forests and mountains, and I did a lot of horseback riding and a lot of walking. And for me, all I really wanted to do, or what gave me joy, was just being alone in nature and enjoying nature. And to me, that's where some of my fondest memories of those childhood moments were.
But do you feel like your childhood was like childhood of all of us? Like we got some conditioning, some programming, disconnected from ourselves, and then you had to find your way back into this flow of.
Sure.
Okay, and so how old were you when you rediscovered that about yourself, or started to be, I don't know, sensing energy, or becoming, or discovering you're a very, very sensitive person? I don't know how it happened for you.
Well, it didn't really start to happen until I was in college. So I was in my 20s. And I was reading, I became interested in spiritual literature and began reading various books on spiritual literature, and became aware that these experiences could be had. I was never, my parents were scientific agnostics, and so I was not raised with any kind of spiritual direction or upbringing, and my spirituality was just wandering around in nature, but I didn't conceive it that way to myself. I just enjoyed being in nature. And when I got to college, I was very I was disillusioned with the way science was taught and science was perceived in these academic institutions. And I think that one of my awakening experiences was when I went to college originally, I studied animal behavior and zoology, and my idea was to study animals in the wilderness, like go to Alaska and study grizzly bear or something like that. And so I went into animal behavior, and I got a summer intern position studying spiders in the New Mexico desert. And so I spent many hours looking at these very, very small creatures. And when we begin to look into the intricacy and the beauty of nature, it's mind blowing. These are absolutely beautiful creatures, and so my perception and my mind was very geared to looking at these small insects. And one time we were living, my partner, my field partner, and I were living out on this ranch, so there wasn't much of any kind of social life for us. And um, that part of New Mexico is very, very rural and very, there's not much going on. Like you just can't go to town and go to a movie or something like this. So we happened to be in one of the small towns and go into an ice cream parlor and started chatting with the girl who was selling the ice cream, and she invited us to a party in the town. Once. So we came back a few nights later to the address that she had told us, but the house where the party was supposed to be was totally dark and empty except for a porch light on the front of the house. And so we were really bummed out because we were really looking forward to going to a party and doing some socialization. And I decided I would just go up to the house and look in the window and make sure no one was home. And when I got to the porch light, there's very few lights in these very small New Mexico towns. So the one porch light had attracted hundreds and hundreds of moths. And they were landing on the wall and they were flying around the porch light. And I was so geared to looking at insects that I was looking at the various moths. And there was one moth that was pure black and white and zigzag patterns all over its body. It was just stunningly beautiful. And I looked at this moth and I said in my mind, "What are you doing here?" And the moth answered me back and said, "What are you doing here?" And that was the proverbial crack in the cosmic egg. It was like, wait a minute, I just talked to a moth. How can this possibly be?
And there was no mushrooms, right? There was no mushrooms.
No mushrooms.
Okay, just to clarify, just to.
Yeah, but that was one of the points where it was like, okay, there's something else going on here than what the scientific paradigm can describe, and that sort of started me on the search, and I basically dropped out of college. I was very disillusioned with the whole process. The whole scientific community seemed like this one big amalgamation of egos, and then I began reading these very spiritual books, and like Carlos Castaneda, like Autobiography of a Yogi, and various other books where they were describing people who were having these spiritual experiences, or ecstatic experiences, or energetic experiences. And that sort of started me on the path of trying to understand what this is, perceive it, to work with it.
Yeah, and yeah, there is always this one moment where something shifts and you suddenly come to this point of no return when you cannot anymore deny that there is something else than just this material, one linear thing, the body and the matter, unless you really have this one moment of experience that you will know forever. You cannot go back to the old paradigm and pretend it doesn't exist. So I'm very happy that little creature, that little being just said this to you and awakened you to all of it. And so healing and spirituality, it's like usually when people, are not feeling quite well, either physically or emotionally or mentally, they start going to different types of doctors looking for different types of solutions, right? But healing is not really on the top of the mind. And my question is, do you, in your practice, sometimes receive people that this is their first time energy healing? Maybe they've never tried something like this before, and this is like scary, or they don't know what to expect. And what do you discover in this process of working with their energy, or what they discover in the process of you working with their energy? Were there any like cases or situations where for the first time on this healing session, Yeah, something just happened.
I'll tell you a funny story. So this woman came to me from China, and I don't remember her exact presenting symptoms, neck pain or something like that. And I did my craniosacral on her, and uh, she sat up and she's like, "Wow, arms feel really weird. It's like I have all this tingling in my arms, and I never felt that before." And I'm like, "Well, that's chi, honey. You had to come all the way from China to Bali and get a treatment from a white guy to experience chi."
This is truly a paradox. Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. But yes, I get people who are who have never experienced these kind of things. Um, and it's the first time for them. And then I get a lot of people who have searched a lot for various modalities and have been on the spiritual path for a while. And I think my practice in Bali is kind of unique in a sense because you have to be a little bit out of the box to get here in the first place. And I think people who are very stuck in a sort of more westernized rational mindset probably would never come here, because there's no reason for them to do that. But people that are drawn here, I think, are drawn here because they're consciously or unconsciously sensitive to energy, and Bali is a massive energy generator because of all the ceremonies that are constantly occurring. So I think my practice is a bit skewed towards people who already have a certain inherent energetic sensitivity. I think it would be very different if I was in a small town in Minnesota, or rural America, or maybe in a big city where they're like what you experience in Hong Kong, where there's
My experience in Hong Kong is quite interesting. I'm learning a lot, and the word here, for example, is efficiency. Fix me so I can run even faster. And usually, I notice, if I will use parts language, the part that brings people to the session is the part that is not satisfied with the results and for example, like position or in the corporate job, or is not satisfied with the amount of work a person can do or amount of money they are making. So there is a part that is not happy with the performance usually. So that part usually is booking the session, and it's like, improve it. Like, we need to be faster, get more money, we need to be all these things. And it's, for me, it's difficult to start healing from a place of this very strong manager that wants to just improve the superficial layer, and it's not about, okay, I want to come back to myself, So
yeah.
Especially when there is this intention, and the first layer, I always have to address this managers that's like, make my life much better than it is now. And they're not talking about their inner self. They're talking about the external situation. So that's and I'm sure it's not only in Hong Kong. I'm sure it's in big cities like New York, London, Dubai. It's managers that wants a fix so that I can be more, I don't know, better in the world, and people can envy me more. So this is also a part of it, that's what I was asking you, what is really true healing and where does it truly start? And why would we go to an energy healing session? I'm just curious, if we talk about human wellness and people healing themselves, from which part they should start. Should they start with their energy in the first place?
Well, I think it goes back to those small inklings in our mind of things that we've been thinking about doing, but we haven't done, or we may imagine the possibility of doing, but we haven't manifested it yet. And like a patient I had today, which I spoke about earlier, you know, she's like, well, how do I do this? How do I bring forth my spiritual nature, my psychic nature, my intuition? And I'm like, well, what have you been thinking about doing? What's in the back of your mind? And she said, well, I've been thinking about starting a healing center and bringing people together who need, who want healing, and to support women who are in difficult positions in their life, transitions in their life, and need emotional and physical support. And I'm like, well, there it is, honey. That's your path. That's your soul path. And you need to manifest this. You need to bring these ideas forth into the physical reality. And this is one of the principles of healing that I hold very strongly, is that, you know, in talking about energy, these potentials, these soul potentials, are potential energy in our field. And if that isn't manifested, then it can actually become negative or become our problem. And what we need to do is we need to express these potential energies. We need the energy to flow. One of the most important basic principles of energy is energy wants to flow. So if we have this idea in the back of the head of whatever it is, oh, I want to write a novel, you need to somehow carve out enough time in your life to begin working on that. To sit down.
That's such a great point. What makes your energy flow? It's such a very well defined way of coming back to that flow. But let me just really give you a hard one. You know, in the modern world, you can see that everything is designed for energy not to flow. We're like, I'm right now on the 29th floor, right? So I'm by default ungrounded.
Yeah.
So we live in this, you know, in this buildings. Everyone in the building have Wi-Fi, and sometimes more than one Wi-Fi, right? So just the electrical, this impact on us. Then I consistently work with a computer and I have my phone. So I'm just bombarded all the time with this electromagnetic field that is 5G, you know, and just don't even want to go into what it does to me. I'm trying not to go there. And, you know, that then I go to supermarket and I buy food that is, you know, I'm sure it's like 20% plastic and 30% chemicals. And then there is air pollution. There is so many distractions. There is like all this imbalance in the natural way of living. And I'm speaking as a person who experienced for a while living in a big city. On top of that, there is stress, there is pressure, there is competition, there's comparison, there is all those other things. Where can you suggest to start, or what would be a little like energy healing way of just healing ourselves as we are living in this very unhuman environments?
Well, it reminds me of a line from Bruce Cockburn, who's my musical guru. He says, if you stare at too much concrete, you forget the earth's alive.
Well said. Well said.
I recently have started teaching in Jakarta, which is, you know, a very highly urbanized place, and much as you describe it. Um, I think the Indonesian culture is a little more humanistic than what you're describing. But still, all of those elements are present for sure. And what I found was in walking from my hotel to my studio where I was teaching, I would pass a tree in sort of a little park-like area, and I communicated with this tree. I touched the leaves and the branches and the stones that were at the base of the tree. And to me, that was a little bit of grounding. That was my connection to nature. That was my reminding that nature is here and that nature exists, and that brings me back to that natural part of myself. But in these highly urbanized environments, we have to make a much bigger effort to do that, not just a natural byproduct of our life. So I would say, in answer to your question, find the tiny bits of nature that exists in your environment and make a conscious effort to connect with that. Grounding the energy. Grounding is a huge component to the healthy expression of our energy. And what you're describing, like, for example, being on the 29th floor and all the electromagnetic frequencies that we're exposed to, these things are ungrounded. Concrete is ungrounded. So we have to make an extra special effort to pay attention to the grounding and to project our energy into the earth. And this is a very important aspect to this process. Now, I wouldn't go hugging trees in public because people will think you're crazy. But
Who cares?
you gotta find moments of intimacy, if you will, with the natural world.
Yeah, I have a lot of intimacy here with eagles because I'm sitting in front of the window and that's who I see. I do not see even one tree, but I can see eagles. They're soaring, and sometimes it's like this is just this connection to an eagle. I can feel them. I can, like you connected with that moss. I can feel their energy, and they're so free and just so in their self. And you're absolutely right. It's just one moment of this connection and communication, like intuitive communication with element of nature or an animal, brings us into this flow of energy. And thank you for reminding about that.
Yeah. And it's also good to have grounding objects that we put on our body or carry in our pockets, like crystals or stones or jewelry that has stones in it. And these grounding elements really help a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for that advice. And in terms of healing, in terms of energy healing, like how an energy healing session like your do, for example, like craniosacral work, how does energy healing session impact our well-being or help our wellness? What does it do for us?
Well, with craniosacral therapy, one very important element is that it rebalances our sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. So I think I can go into these terms a little bit without hopefully getting too technical, but the nervous system has an automatic component that we call autonomic nervous system. It makes our heart beat, it makes us breathe, it makes us sweat, it runs our immune system and all the different internal physiological functions of the body. And that autonomic nervous system or automatic nervous system has two components, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is what revs us up, makes us able to run, to fight, to do our jobs, to be sort of aggressive and active into the world. And the parasympathetic nervous system calms us down. It works with digestion and relaxation, sleep, immunity, and all of the things that are rest and repair related to the body. So in a sense, healing is about bringing us more into that parasympathetic state. And craniosacral therapy does that in a very profound way. It rebalances that sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system, because most of us in modern society are much too sympathetically driven. So rebalancing that nervous system is a very important process. And we can do it ourselves, things like take an Epsom salt bath at night and listen to some nice music and have some candles. These kind of things bring the parasympathetic nervous system more up and calms the sympathetic. So that's one aspect.
That's one aspect. Give me something spiritual.
Okay.
I had really mind-blowing experiences at your training and on the table with you. So give me some extra.
Well, I think it comes to experiencing the flow of energy in the body. When we experience that, then that gives us a whole nother perspective on spirituality and our humanness. And one of the things that I say, one of my taglines in my training is, we're spiritual beings of light and energy living in a physical body, but somebody forgot to tell us.
Sure, it's the biggest kept secret of the universe. Yeah. Someone forgot to tell us that we're spirit in the body. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, part of it's about opening the psychic centers, the chakras, so that the energy can flow through there and clean and clear the debris that we accumulate in our daily life and through our conditioning, through our trauma. Clearing these energetic patterns through the flow of energy. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not.
Well, I can share. I just, what really stayed with me from working with you, there was a really interesting moment of, it was a Zoom session. So for those who do not believe that you can have impactful energy healing on Zoom, listen to this. It was COVID times, and you were, and I was just getting used to Hong Kong energy, and you were giving me a session on Zoom. And I just felt like I really, out of the right side of my face, I can remember it just right now. There was an energy that just like left. And it felt something very, very old. And I still don't know exactly what it was, but it was so visceral. It was so strong, that feeling, like something just left through my face and out of my face. I will not go into detail what that might be, but it was a potent cleaning and potent clearing of energy. Like the more you were kind of facilitating the charging of my system with my own energy, the more it facilitated any energy that doesn't belong in the system to kind of leave. So that was very visceral and stayed with me in a very strong way. And I don't ever, maybe you don't remember, but it was many years ago on the craniosacral, it was light body. I think it was light body training. Yeah, I had a very huge Kundalini awakening and like a really, big experience that I had to integrate for a while. But that was a true spiritual potent moments and experiences that made a difference in my life and in my path and in my process. And I know sometimes, you just feel tired and you need like an energy boost and you go to do energy healing, which I always recommend. And it can be so much more than that. It can be opening another door on this realization process of yourself as a soul, as an energy. So thank you for those beautiful experiences and for this amazing work that you do.
Thank you. What comes to mind is an image that I had. I had a practice in Tucson, Arizona for years, and I got into hiking in some of the high desert canyons there, and in those canyons, sometimes the walls are very sheer on either side, and the stream flows through. So you have to walk through the stream. There's no path. And I was walking through the stream in this canyon, and it had been a dry season, so the water was a little bit low, and there was a big boulder in the stream, in the middle of the stream, that separated the two sides of the flow of water. And in the side that the water was flowing through freely was all clean and clear water, and everything was great. And on the side, when the water had gone down, the flow of water on the other side had stagnated. So in other words, there wasn't a strong flow of water through there. It was full of algae and very kind of sticky and icky and not pleasant water there. And what I realized, it was, this became an analogy for me for energy healing in a sense, because what we're doing with the energy healing is we're increasing the water, we're increasing the flow, we're increasing the voltage of that energy, so that water can flow through those channels that have become stagnant. And the very act, or the very nature of that water flowing through there does the healing work. It does the clearing.
Yeah, and it's sort of like the moment it flows, the whole system just realigns itself back to balance, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Adolf, that's been very, very informative. Yeah, what do you wanted to say?
Well, I wanted to touch on your comment of how Zoom energy healing works. And
Yeah.
one of the things I say to people is, well, like, we can pick up a phone and talk to each other on a Zoom call halfway around the world, right? I'm in Bali, you're in Hong Kong. We're miles apart, but we can exchange energy and information through an electromagnetic field. My phone isn't connected to any wires. My phone is connected to a field of energy, and information can flow through that field. Well, we have bioelectric fields that surround us, and those bioelectric fields, energy and information can flow through as well. And this is how the distance healings can occur.
Yeah, in my experience, it's of course it's always nice to be in person, but when you don't have access to that, it's still very potent to work online. And for me, it's always, I feel it. I feel the shift. I feel everything during the process and the change. So yeah, that's real. And just before we close, Adolf, anything else you want to share with us?
Well, if I had to say one practice that people could do to begin to liberate their energy and creativity and reconnect with their soul purpose, would be some kind of journaling. And there's a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which is written for people who are recovering their inner creativity. She wrote it for writers, but it can be applied to any form of creativity. And she has an exercise in that book called morning pages, where every morning the first thing you do is you sit down and you write 3 pages. And I think that's an excellent process to just get that flow of energy going. And whatever comes to mind, write it down on the paper. And then that creates a flow of energy, and that then stimulates the creativity and reintegrates self.
Thank you. Thank you for this very, very good reminder. And I will try it. Like apple cider vinegar. It will be a second ritual from Adolf Brown. Apple cider
Well,
vinegar and 3 pages of journaling every morning.
well, that came from Julia Cameron, so that's where the credit should go there.
But I found out it from you, so thank you, Adolf, for this
Well, it's a
conversation.
pleasure talking to you, always.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your wisdom, your knowledge, and I wish your healing practice will continue growing and you will be, saving humanity through your beautiful energy work and everything you teach us. Until soon.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Your Soul's Therapist podcast. I want you to know that I deeply appreciate your willingness to find healing for your soul and add to our collective sanity. If you feel like this podcast offered you something valuable, I invite you to circulate a goodwill back by rating the show and clicking the button follow. If you will share this episode with your friends and family, I will be beyond grateful. My investment of time and energy to create this authentic content is significant, and your input and support can make a huge, huge difference. And before you go, I want to remind you that each of our journeys are unique and truly complex. And my commitment is to look at your soul with clarity, to help you see what you might be blind to see, and gently guide you out of the places where you have been stuck. Whether you're drawn to my intuitive healing sessions or profound depth of counseling, I'm here, ready to accompany you on your path. Go to my website, vladadesousa.com, and choose the best way to work with me one-on-one. May you be blessed.